Hi there, here's another episode of What to Read, and this time I'm going to talk to you about a controversial scientific development which was first described by Jared Diamond in 1987 in an article in Discover magazine, where he talks about the biggest mistake in human history. It's not what you think actually. He actually goes on to say that agriculture was the biggest mistake in human history. Now, those of you who have read the current bestseller by Yuval Noah Harari, Sapiens, might recognize this entire thing because he actually was influenced by Jared Diamond, who wrote this entire piece in 1987. He says that agriculture was the biggest mistake of humanity because the pre-agricultural society was more healthy, it was more egalitarian, and it also had better equality of the sexes. Now, what he argues is that this entire agricultural society that developed because agriculture was an easier way to feed more people, perhaps because of the population increase of human beings. From hunter-gatherers, we progressed towards being agriculturists because we could feed more mouths, but we lost out on crucial aspects. Hunter-gatherers had a sort of diet which was more nutrient rich than agriculturists ever have had, is what he says. And he says that this has now been proven through various studies in archaeology and an aspect of archaeology called paleopathology, which studies the kind of diseases that the prehistoric people had, and the discovery of these diseases shows that the hunter-gatherers had fewer diseases, and once we developed into agriculturists, that's when these diseases like tuberculosis, anemia, bone lesions because of a lot of hard work on the field, all of those developed, and subsequently the various other complications. There is an argument, he says, that people say that the kind of art and technology that was developed because agriculture gave us more free time than a hunter-gatherer had is a false argument according to him, because even during the hunter-gatherer era in the caves there was a lot of good art that was actually being created. Of course, the bands used to move from place to place and the art could have been lost, but he says that it does not say that there was any significant saving of time because we moved to agriculture. This he illustrates by comparing the agriculturists of today with the Bushmen and other tribes which have continued to live in a prehistoric nomadic way, and he says that the agriculturists actually spend more time in producing food than the hunter-gatherers actually take in gathering food. He says that nutrients are really less and carbohydrates are more in some of the main crops that the entire humanity eats, which is rice, wheat and maize. He also goes on to talk about how in a hunter-gatherer society, because the bands were small, because there were not too many people around and there was no contact with other bands as such, there was a lack of communicable diseases and epidemics. And he also talks about how there was no hierarchy, so to say. There was no racial dynamics or other kind of dynamics because the band stayed together and they had little to no contact with other bands, and there were no kings and nobles, and there could not be this system where a few people could actually benefit from the labor of many. So he goes on to argue that agriculture has turned out to be something that has actually benefited only the elite and actually made the lives of most of humanity actually much worse. So this is the argument that he presents. He even presents the argument that gender relations were much better, equality was much better in the hunter-gatherer society because everyone had a specific designated task, and also the fact that after agriculture the time span between having kids actually decreased, because earlier the hunter-gatherers would wait for 4 years to have another kid, for the simple reason that the mother could not be carrying two kids at the same time and also going around in that nomadic lifestyle. But after agriculture, because all of these things settled, women started having one kid every 2 years, and that could also have led to a lot of changes in the gender dynamics of that particular time. So it is a very controversial, very provocative article. Go ahead and read it. Let me know what you think about it and whether you agree with it. Of course, there is no going back from the current scenario to a prehistoric, pre-agriculture society. We have to live in this particular society itself. But whether or not we are able to solve the problems that we created by adopting this kind of a lifestyle is something that even Jared Diamond thinks that we do not have an answer to.